had the qualification standards today been in place last year, I would have been well off the mark. Within just a few days of publishing my first video in my Chicago Marathon series, I learned from a Facebook post in a Chicago Marathon group that Chicago has changed its time qualification standards. And then sometime after that, I learned that the corral, even the start corral standards have changed, and everything has gotten faster. I finished in 4 hours, 13 minutes, 25 seconds. This year, I would have to run the same race in 3 hours and 50 minutes to be considered a time qualifier. Again, the standards have risen for every age group. However, the older you get, they have, it seems, just gone up astronomically to the tune of, I want to say, you have to be up to 30 minutes faster, whereas younger age groups, they're looking at increases of about having to be 10 minutes faster. I don't know the whole story behind that. I would assume that some of this has to do with the high number of people who are applying for the Chicago Marathon. If I remember correctly, for this coming marathon, I think it was 120,000 people applied, and there'll only be about 50,000 runners, so you can do the math. But this will make the Chicago Marathon harder to get into than the Boston Marathon. Just looking at my age group alone, it seems that the standards for Chicago now are in line with New York, because New York standards also appear to be faster than Boston's for all age groups. What does that mean to me? In my very first video in this series, I talked about, in the intro, how running a sub 4 hour marathon time could potentially qualify me to run Boston. Well, that's true as of this moment, but then the question becomes, if New York and Chicago are now more competitive than Boston, for how much longer is Boston going to keep their standards in place before they significantly lower them and make it, or I should say raise them, and make it more difficult for people to get in? Another question this raises for me is, if Chicago and New York are this competitive, then is this goal of trying to achieve a Boston Marathon qualifying time, is it even relevant anymore? It used to mean something, right? Qualifying for Boston used to mean that, I think, and maybe it still means this, but that you're one of the best runners, probably in the world, that you met the standard, that you got into a dream race. I think, is it the oldest marathon in the United States? And I know for me, having been running now for decades, that it's always been the gold standard. It's what people dream of. They cry over when they finally qualify for this race after maybe running dozens upon dozens, or maybe even more marathons to qualify for it. So it all just kind of raises for me this question of, how important is time, right? I've said before, I don't think mastering the marathon is about a time necessarily. I think that for each person, mastering the marathon may have a different definition. So I don't want to step on anyone's toes or just say this is the definition of what a marathon master is. Do the new qualifying standards make me feel any less for what I considered an achievement last year? No, I don't. The qualifying standard for my age category last year was to run Chicago in 4 hours 20 minutes, or obviously less. I hit that standard. It was not easy to hit. I will be honest and tell you, not to brag, but just about every woman I bumped into after the marathon that I had a conversation with didn't even come close to 4 hours and 20 minutes or less. And when I say every, I mean of any and all ages. So they were certainly, those women are out there, because there were plenty who met the standard in my age category, but I didn't meet a lot of those people. In fact, I didn't meet any, I don't think. And so it's still a difficult time for most people to achieve. Chicago has made it more difficult, thereby making this race more prestigious. We can still run it. If we don't meet the time, we can still apply by lottery. We can still run for a charity. But, it was nice to have a race where there was some wiggle room, I will say. It was nice to have a major marathon that gave more people an opportunity to perform exceptionally well, because I consider the previous time qualification standards still a high bar to reach, and give them a shot. So, on one hand, it's kind of sad, but then on the other hand, it's like, well, again, if you want to run Chicago, you still have options. Lottery, charity, or work really hard to time qualify.
And I think you can definitely crush Chicago as it comes. So yeah, I believe in you. So
what does that mean, though? What do you mean by crush? Because it's so, that's one of the things I think about marathoning that's quite interesting, is that it's all so relative.
Yes.
For an elite, like I did Chicago in 4 hours 13 minutes 25 seconds last year.
Sure.
And I was elated with that.
Yes.
But then, you go online and you see people say, oh, I ran it in 3 hours and 30 minutes and this is so unacceptable and so average. And
right.
And then there's a person who's upset because they didn't hit 2:30.
Right.
So,
it's a question, it's you versus you. So you're going to go out there and pursue the best version of yourself. That's the way I see it.
I think I agree.